Scott Bell is the college sports editor at the Dallas Morning News. Read his stuff for quite some time, or things that he has also done. He's also a Michigan man. And he also has a newsletter about Michigan athletics. And I noticed in his newsletter yesterday on Substack.com, it's scottbell.substack.com, that he had written an article post that Michigan-Wisconsin game. And he joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Now, Scott, I'll be transparent here. When I put up that you also covered Michigan or wrote about Michigan, a couple of the people in the section said, well, make sure you hold him accountable. They were not trying to question you, but the fact that you're Michigan through and through. What, in the end, did Michigan and the Big Ten and Wisconsin, did they get this right, first of all, as far as the post-game consequences, suspensions, et cetera?
I think so. For the most part, I think you can pick certain nits and say some people may have gotten off a little light. Some people that didn't get punished maybe should have gotten at least a slap on the wrist. But the fact of the matter is, this needed to be a situation where Juwan Howard walked away with far and away the biggest punishment, and that's what happened. I think there's enough nuance or sort of little instigations that happened elsewhere to where I think it's right not to have him lose his job over something like this. But the fact of the matter is, the incident is centering around Howard's actions for a reason, and he took what was a tense situation and a lot of verbal stuff, and he's the one that really escalated it to a physical thing, and that's where it kind of turned into a bit of a brawl with players throwing punches and things like that too.
Juwan Howard's fiery. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And, the last couple of weeks there have been, the series of incidences before, like the Maryland thing that happened and everything that kind of went into that. How much does Michigan need him to just take a step back and figure out how to rein that in and use that fire more positively?
Oh, I mean, it's crucial both for Michigan, but for Howard and his future as a coach too. I mean, the thing about this and it ending short of a firing is Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel, it basically has to sit down with him and say, okay, this is it. Like, this can't happen again. And if there's ever an incident that is even treading the line of something like this, like, you're done. And if you're done at Michigan, that's probably going to be a big aspect of his coaching career too. I mean, this is a guy who made his name in NBA assistant circles first with the Heat, and he has a lot of respect. I know a lot of people think of him as, okay, this is a former player, now he's going the coaching route, but he paid his dues on as an NBA assistant first, and he is very well regarded in coaching circles. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how much players respect him, no matter what his X's and O's acumen may be, you simply can't be in charge of a program and in charge of players of this age and act like that.
Scott, in terms of the on the field or on the court and the X's and O's, Michigan right now 14-11. They obviously had a really good year last year, but what's just kind of the consensus amongst Michigan faithful in terms of Howard through these first, 2+ seasons now, and the direction of the basketball program?
That obviously the season's been a bit of a speed bump, but the fact of the matter is it's a year removed from Howard being AP National Coach of the Year and taking a team that was supposed to be a middle-of-the-road Big Ten team last year and give them an outright Big Ten title in a season where, a handful of teams were Ken Pom, top 15, top 20 people. The Big Ten didn't end up having a good showing in the NCAA tournament last season outside of Michigan making it to the Elite Eight. So it was a little bit disappointing, but Michigan had a very good season last season. Now this year it's been kind of the inverse. Most people expected them to win the Big Ten or be in contention for the Big Ten, and now they're the middling team. But prior to this incident, Michigan had sort of started turning things around. They had a really poor non-conference and a slow start to the conference season, but they picked up a really big win over Purdue a week ago, beat a ranked Iowa team earlier in the week, and we're sort of starting to work their way off the bubble. but now the talk has sort of shifted to off court things, and obviously that's because of Michigan's own doing.
You know, you mentioned last year's run and also the award honor that he got, and then this year being obviously a disappointment. Do you think what happens Sunday, and he's a Michigan man, and I know what that means. I really do. I've had people tell me that have gone there, including you, but do you feel like that allows Michigan then, if they wanted to move on from him, to use this as the reason, to use his record as the reason, but this is the reason?
If a school was wanting to move on from someone, and we've seen this in football and in basketball, using incidents to show for a cause, so you're not going to be on the hook for paying a lot of salary, then I would think that this would rise to that level of there. But I also, there's no thought of Michigan wanting to replace Howard because of on-court performance, and I do think the off-the-court incident didn't rise enough to the level of removing him. So yes, in theory, this could be something that an administration would use to sort of save some money, but I don't think that's the situation in Ann Arbor.
Scott, there's a lot of things going on in college athletics as the Dallas Morning News college sports editor. The NIL, the transfer portal, the college football expansion, what we've seen the last year or two with COVID and all the things that are going on. How do you keep up with it all, with your role? And is it probably as busy or a whirlwind of time as you've seen?
Yeah, never a dull moment. In at times it can be a little bit of a challenge because of finite resources and lots of stories, angles, and things to chase. But I love it. It's especially being in DFW, being in Texas. It's really the epicenter of. Obviously, it's always been a football area, but this is where a lot of the movers and shakers are in terms of the NIL and the conference realignment and stuff like that. And right now, basketball. I mean, we're obviously all things Baylor. You got Texas Tech. You got Texas, and everything happened in the Big 12. But even SMU, right in Dallas's backyard, on the bubble, and there's really never a shortage of things to chase and stories to tell, and just really fortunate to be in position to help try and tell those stories and be a part of a good team that has a lot of smart reporters doing our best to try and tell those stories.
All right, Scott, then let's fast forward to 2026. New TV deals are done. Everybody's getting their money. What's the playoff look like?
I think the 12 teams is where it eventually lands. Now, I know the SEC is now saying, well, we wanted to expand this time around, but next time around maybe we don't. But the fact of the matter is, I think long term it is going to be in everyone's best interest for fans, for TV deals, for expansion, or the preservation of bowl games to sort of make it to 12 teams. So. As of right now, if I was asked to say what's it going to be in 2026, I think 12 is a good number. I like the idea of rewarding some sort of buys to the top 4 teams. I guess with 12 teams, it would be 4 teams getting that buy, and I really like the idea of the system to where, okay, those first 4 teams are getting a buy, then 5 is going to play 12, 6 is going to play 11. 7's going to play 10, 8's going to play 9, but those higher seeds are going to get games on campus for that first round. Beyond that, I think you can still sort of get those neutral site games, get those bowl games, but what a great opening week of a playoff it would be to see 4 on-campus games with stakes that high. I'd love to see that, and I know a lot of things can change in 4 or 5 years, but sort of seems that's the way it's trending, or that it's the way a lot of people with influence are hoping that it tracks.
How impressed were you, or even were you surprised that after the Texas and Oklahoma story popped about the SEC, that I'm sure they thought that the Big 12 would implode, and that was the discussion, that maybe everybody just disappears, evaporates, and they could just walk into the SEC immediately. How quickly they were able to find a way to survive, and they're not stronger without those 2, but they're sure a hell of a lot better off than I think most people thought in late July.
I completely agree, and it's obviously short of calling it being proactive, because it was in reaction to Texas and Oklahoma leaving. But after that, those departures happened. It was reactive, but at the same time, it was proactive in terms of taking the next step. And I give the Big 12 credit for knowing what was going to be coming next and seeing where all these dominoes would fall, and know that all these other conferences were going to be making moves too. So to act swiftly, and to try and do it with different factors in mind, in terms of expanding your footprint, getting bigger alumni networks in there, thinking about what your next TV deal is going to be, and things of that nature. So I think a lot of people thought that with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, there's always this talk about these 4 super conferences, and if the Big 12 gets their top dog sort of poached, that maybe the Big 12 could be the conference that falls to the wayside. But I give those in charge at the Big 12 credit for acting swiftly, and so far it's been about as good as you can imagine, given all the circumstances.
Jim Harbaugh signed a new deal. He was flirting, we know that, and that happens. Coaches do that all the time. He's a Michigan man. Did he I mean, I would think after the year they had that Michigan fans would be happy, but is that one of those things, okay, that was fine, but don't do it again, we waited long enough for you to win?
Yeah, it's the uniqueness of that situation, and sort of just the awkwardness of it, especially on the heels of basically the exact opposite scenario happening last offseason, where Jim Harbaugh took a very public 50% pay cut and was basically dangled out publicly of, hey, are you going to be back? Are you going to be back? It's basically up to the school. Well, now Harbaugh had the leverage this offseason, and he hasn't really been apologetic for what happened, and in that sense, it's somewhat refreshing almost to have that level of candor, to where he's like, yeah, I'm going to interview for an NFL job. I'm not really going to apologize for it. I'm still the challenge of winning a Super Bowl is still sort of hanging over my head, and I'm interested in exploring it. And the optics of going there and interviewing on National Signing Day was certainly unique, and it's sort of an awkward sort of return for him to come back without that NFL offer, but he now has a new contract, and if there is someone that can navigate through awkwardness, I think Jim Harbaugh is that guy, because he sort of thrives on awkward and doing things sort of left of center.
Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate your time.
Yep, happy to be here.
Scott Bell, Dallas Morning News sports editor, college sports editor, and also writes the newsletter, Substack at scottbell.substack.com, and he has newsletters, and some of them are premium, and some of them are not, and he's been around the Dallas Morning News for quite some time. Appreciate his insight from a Michigan man, because I saw there were lines drawn. I mean, it was Michigan, it was everyone else. And I saw even some of the famous names who've come out of Michigan defending Juwan Howard. And it's kind of like I said yesterday, the red states and blue states. It was black and white in some cases. But in the end, Michigan knocked down 5 games, done, regular season. And then the players who threw punches or landed punches, and then also Garb. Now there's a complaint whether Garb should have been suspended, or
my complaint's Diabate. One game, that dude's out there just throwing haymakers left and right. He got one game, and that's not his first incident either. I think that one was a little light considering he had a previous issue. So, and he was awfully proud, like I was talking about yesterday. I mean, he's right up there in the camera and, calling for more and wanting more and instigating it further. And I know it was a big scrum, so there were other guys doing that as well, but he just so happened to be front and center, and very clearly caught on camera throwing punches, multiple punches. So one game for him, I was a little surprised by that in hindsight, but they dealt with it, and you can argue all day long over who was right, who was wrong, and all of that, but it was just an ugly scene anyways, and glad they took care of it, and hopefully it's not something that happens again, because if it does, especially for Michigan, then that will turn the heater up a little bit on Juwan Howard, because as good of a coach as he might be, and they had a really great year last year, like he said, you can't have incidents pile up, and not that he's a bad dude or anything like that, but that was one of those kind of things when you reach out and you slap a guy. Like, you don't get to do that a second time, a third time. There's not many Bobby Knights out there. You know what I'm saying? So, that was an interesting little fracas, and seems that it's settled down, so we'll see what happens with these two teams.
From Ray